With 5 platinum albums and over 14 million records sold, Tesla is a model example of a Sacramento success story. Their melodic brand of classic rock has been a staple of the American FM rock radio for over 40 years. And on this episode of So That Happened, stories from the Sacramento 80s music scene, I'll be talking to the one and only Mr. Brian Wheat.
Hey man, how you doing?
Hey, nice Brian, how are you?
I'm good. I'm in 110 degree heat in Las Vegas, sitting by the pool on a day off.
Right on. And you guys are on tour right now, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah, we're just finishing up a 3-week run. We got a show tomorrow in San Diego, and then a show in Phoenix, and then we're off for a month, and then we do another 3-week run. Or we don't. In the old days, we used to tour for 6 months straight, and
you have a lot of time off, right?
No, not the first 4 albums. There was hardly ever any time off. That's why we broke up in 1995, because it was just tour album, tour album, tour album, tour album, tour album. And
right.
We just burn out. I mean, and of course, we were doing lots of things that weren't that good for us either. But when we got back together in 2000, we kind of keep reinventing the way we tour to suit our age and stuff, because a couple of us are in our 60s and a couple of us are in our 50s.
Right. It makes it as you get older, right?
Mood of thought, right? I mean, what was a 18-year-old kid playing the Oasis Ballroom that, at 61, I'd still be doing this with the same guys.
Yeah. It's
pretty incredible.
It's a blessing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Incredible. Well, let's go back to the very beginning. First of all, did you grow up in Sacramento, Brian?
Yeah, I was born in Sacramento.
Okay.
And I lived there my whole life until about 8 years ago. And then I left and went to Texas, and that didn't work out. And now I'm in upstate New York.
Ah.
And I'm pretty happy there. Yeah, it's very beautiful up there. But yeah, I never thought I'd leave Sacramento. It's amazing, but you just your life changes, your priorities change, how you view life changes, all that. And one day I woke up, and I mean, I thought I'd die on that house in J Street. Yeah, I mean, I if I hit the lottery, I'll buy that house back.
There you go.
Yeah,
and throw one heck of a party.
Yeah.
Now, talk about a success story. I mean, a Sacramento success story. I mean, everybody knows you started out as City Kid and then became Tesla. But not a lot of people remember there was a band before City Kid called Earthshaker, correct?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, how the whole thing started was me and Frank are from the basic same neighborhood, and Frank's 4 years younger than me. And I was playing in a band called Rage, this little, kind of garage backyard party band. And my brother had told me about Frank, and he said, there's this 14-year-old kid that's this amazing guitar player. And I was 18. I thought, oh, what do you mean 14-year-old, right?
Right.
So we happened to meet one day at this little warehouse, which was where the 16th Street Ice House was, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Now I don't. It's got a bunch of shops there and stuff.
Yeah.
And Frank's mother was dating the guy that owned the building that we rented. So Frank came in, and the guy said, "Hey, my girlfriend's son would like to play with you, jam with you." He's a 14-year-old guy. We said, "Yeah, sure." And he was amazing.
Oh yeah.
And I said, "Hey man, let's make a band." And then I realized that was the same guy that my brother talked about. So at that point, me and Frank made the band that was going to become Earthshaker.
Right. And I was talking to you a little bit before we started this stream. I said, yeah, I played in a band called No Dice. And we did
I remember No Dice.
Yeah, we played a battle of the bands with you guys, and obviously you smoked us. But
was that in Encina High School or something?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember when you guys came on, it just like, it's like your head went like, oh, because we knew that you guys were just going someplace.
Uh, you know, it was funny because Frank's like, he's so good, and he was so good at such an early age.
Yeah.
That it made the band really good as well. You know, because he was exceptional guitar player, 14, 15.
Oh, incredible.
And it's funny because when we first started playing like backyard parties, and then we used to throw these gigs at this place called the Jet Check Hall on Power Inn Road.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we started playing clubs. And because we were not of age, we couldn't go out in the club. We had to sit in the back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, you know, having thought about this, there are lots of clubs we play.
Right.
In the beginning.
Let's talk about that now. We're on that subject.
Okay. So the first club we ever played was the Rock Factory.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So we had this band, Earthshaker, and we used to do all covers. You know, and it was all like Scorpions and UFO and Van Halen and, you know, the kind of rock that we loved, right?
Yeah.
And we had this friend of ours named Rick Jackson, and we made a little tape of our rehearsal, and he took it to this guy, Steve Klausman, who managed a band called Ian Shelter, and he owned the Rock Factory. And he said, hey, these guys are like, you know, 18 to 14, let them play. And Steve's like, well, they're not old enough, but they're pretty good. So he said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $50 a night, and they can open up for my band in Shelter, and they have to stay in the back.
Right.
So at that point, we started playing clubs, and we got the attention of Steve Klausman. And honestly, I mean, I can't say enough things about, there were two people in the whole Sacramento scene that without them, I wouldn't be sitting here today. One, Steve Klausman. Okay. The other's Dave Dittman's the other.
Yeah. Oasis Ballroom.
Oasis Ballroom. But we'll get to that.
Right.
So Steve Klausman managed this band in Shelter, and he was trying to get them a record deal, and he saw this potential in us, and he said, look, I'm going to manage you. You need to write your own material, and you need to do this, that, and the other. So at that point, we started trying to write our own songs. And when we did, we were doing more like Loverboy kind of sound stuff, you know, to try to get into, you know, the nightclubs where you could play 5 nights a week.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
Five sets a night. And we tried that for a while. And, you know, we used to play the Rock Factory, and that was pretty much it. We never could, you know, and then I think we did C Street North had that thing where, what was that TV show they used to have?
Capital Rock.
Capital Rock. We were on Capital Rock. Yeah.
Welcome to another television and radio broadcast of Capital Rock. Taped live from C Street North.
So we were getting up, you know, we were starting to do things, but we still weren't like a very popular band. There were lots of bands like Target, Tight Quarters, and Ian Shelter, and
Secret,
you know, all these
bands.
Yeah, that were doing these 5 nights a week. You know, there was probably 12 clubs in Sacramento at that time. You could do an 8-week circuit and never play the same club and make a living back then. You know, make a couple grand a month.
Yeah.
That was a lot of money, 1981, 82, 83, right?
Right.
So, you know, Steve Klausman being the guy that he was and recognizing that we had talent and that we were young. The key is we were young.
Yeah.
We were very young. He said, you're going to come up here. He had like this building in Auburn, California, and you're going to work on writing songs 5 days a week, and you're going to play on the weekends. So that's when we started to approach writing songs on our own. So we started writing these kind of pop songs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I said, like Lover Boy,
Loverboy, yeah.
you know, that kind of pop
Vein.
stuff.
Sure.
But that's not what we were all about. We were rocker guys, like
Yeah.
Earthshaker, right?
Yeah. Right.
So by this time, Earthshaker was done, and we changed our name to City Kid.
Right.
Right. And we got Brooke Bright playing with us, and we still had Bobby C, and we had this guy Jeff Harper who went. He later joined this band Target.
Yeah.
So we started to write these songs, and then our lead singer Jeff Harper, he quit, right, to join Target because they were playing all the clubs,
right? Yeah,
and making all that money. And these girls from Georgetown, California, said they knew this guy Jeff that sang up there, and it was Jeff Keith.
Yeah, you found that.
We're playing at the Rock Factory, opening up for Ian Shelter.
Yep.
And he came and he sat in with us on a song, and he knew nothing about being on stage or nothing. Never
Really?
had. No, he never knew what a monitor was. You know, that you sing in the floor monitor.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
there's all this feedback going on, and I told Frank, I said, "Oh man, he's terrible, man."
Oh no.
Frank said, "No, Brian, I was next to him. He's got a great voice," and he does.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Amazing.
He sings better today at 65 than he sang his whole career. It's amazing.
Wow. There'd be a lot of singers that would like to know his secret for that.
Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask him. But if it hadn't been for Frank, I don't know, you know, being with, you know, everything happens for a reason in the cosmic. Yeah. You know, I'm very into the cosmic, you know, it's all destined thing, right?
Me too. Me too.
So then Jeff Keith joined the band.
Yeah.
And Steve got Ronnie Montrose from the band Montrose to produce a demo for us.
Okay.
Because now we're writing songs and we're trying to get record deals. And Steve Klausman's sending out all these demo tapes to every record company in Los Angeles that you could imagine.
Yeah.
And Ronnie said, "Hey, you guys got two sides to you. You got this one side that's kind of like Lover Boy or, you know, whatever. But then you have this other side like Def Leppard." And at this time, Pyromania just came out.
Right, right.
He said, "You got to pick a side." Yeah. We said, "Well, we want to be a rock band." So from that day on, we started to write rock songs.
Yeah.
Right? And we quit at that point trying to play all the clubs that were in Sacramento. I mean, there was the Rock Factory, there was the Phone Company, there was C Street North, there was Bitter Creek, there was Shire Road Pub, there was Galactica, there was the Oasis Ballroom. We hadn't played the Oasis Ballroom yet. So Steve Klausman got us into an Oasis gig one night, opening for Ian Shelter again. And Dave Dittman, who was a real big advocate of original bands, and you know, he saw what Steve Klausman saw, and so he started saying, "Look, I'll give you a Sunday night, and you can play your own original material, and you know, do two sets, one set of covers or one set of original, or mix it, both 50-50, and build a following." And that's what we did. So we started on a Sunday, and, you know, all our fans were our friends, and, you know, how it would just, you didn't have the internet. You didn't have anything. Flyers. We used to go flyer people's cars.
Absolutely.
You know, Still Breeze would be playing. We'd go flyer all their fans. And then Sundays turned into a Wednesday. And then, you know, as it went along, and it progressed pretty quickly, it turned into, okay, I'm going to give you a Friday and a Saturday, and we're going to see how it goes.
Wow. Good deal.
And I said to him at that point, because, you know, the Wednesdays and the Sundays, we were putting in 300-400 people a night, you know, which was good. I said, "All right, Dave, but here's the thing now. We don't want to do covers anymore. You know, if we do a cover, it's going to be one or two that maybe we'll record. We want to do a 90-minute, we want to do a concert.
Concert of your stuff."
He said, "That's pretty bold." And at this time we were working with, trying to get a deal, and he knew all the people that were coming to see it. So he knew we were making and he said, okay, I'm going to let you do it. And it turned out. And we did that up until our record came out.
Wow.
Until they closed him down.
Yeah.
And he was such an advocate of what we were doing that we didn't have any money. So when we weren't playing, he gave me and Jeff a job there. So
wow.
I would stock the bar, and when they'd have big concerts and stuff, Jeff would go out and serve drinks. So, I mean,
amazing.
I can't say enough great things about Dave and the Oasis. I mean, there were all kinds of places, and they were all great, and they all served a purpose. But for us personally, for our first gig as Tesla, was opening up for David Lee Roth at the Meadowlands.
Yeah.
Right? 18,000 people. Now, we went from the Oasis Ballroom to that stage.
Wow.
And when we got on stage at the Meadowlands, we looked like we knew what we were doing. And why? Because we had had so much time in a kind of concert environment. Dave had a great stage. He had great productions. We used to bring tons of lights in, and
great sound system.
It just turned into this thing. And had it not been for the Oasis and Dave's support, I don't know that we would have been ready when the bell rang to jump in and go.
Right.
So that's how we started in Sacramento and in the clubs there. But there were so many clubs back then and so many bands.
Yeah.
It was so, when I look at it today, it was such a great time for anyone who was a musician, because people, even if they didn't write their own material, they could make a living back then
playing
covers and doing a 8-week circuit. I mean, but there were a lot of great musicians in Sacramento, a lot of great people, a lot of, it was just cool. And it's sad today because, now with social media and cell phones, it's just not the same.
No.
Young bands come to me, and, because I have my own label and I manage and produce, and I do pretty much all things music. And I tell young bands, listen, when I made it, it was 1,000 times easier then to break a band than it is today. And it was fucking hard back then. Now it's nearly impossible. But if you want to take the shot, I still believe a great song is a great song. The trick now is, how do you get it to the masses? And it's not about selling records anymore.
Nope.
It's about selling tickets and T-shirts.
Yeah, it's merch.
So you've got to be able to play good live.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I pride Tesla in is Tesla is a very, very good live band.
You stuck to your guns too. It's like when you guys were coming up with the Guns N' Roses and the Poisons and the hair bands, you guys never went down that road. You stayed true to that rock route.
A lot of that is because of Sacramento.
Yeah.
Like a lot of bands think, well, if I move to, and you have the same thing now in Nashville. Nashville's the new LA, right? If I move to LA at that time, I have a better shot at making. Well, that's not at making it. That's not true. Tesla stayed true to what we were because we stayed in Sacramento and we weren't influenced by Poison or Motley Crue or Guns N' Roses or everyone else that was on that LA scene at the time. So why are we different? Same reason a band like Queensryche is different, because they stayed up in Seattle where they were. You know what I mean? We are a Sacramento band. No matter what, for better or for worse, we're not a Los Angeles, LA band. Tesla's roots were from Sacramento. The way we thought, the way we wrote songs, the way we live our lives, the way we act today as adults, all stems from growing up in Sacramento. It was a great place to grow up. Music was therapy and a release for me and Frank and Jeff and Tommy and Troy, I mean, we grew up in the hood. That was our way to get out of the hood, you know, or whatever. But we weren't even thinking about that. We just connected on this music thing, you know, especially me and Frank. I look at Frank and Jeff, you know, today, because it's just three of us. We're lucky that the three of us are still out there, and we're still, you know, playing shows and still playing to a lot of people. And people still come, and I see like 3 or 4 generations. I see, you know, I saw a 6-year-old kid the other day singing all the words to all our songs. And I saw his parents, and I saw his grandparents. Wow. Right? There was 3 generations.
Yeah.
And I asked the little kid, you know, like, what's your favorite song? You know, what you give? How did you hear about Tesla? My mom. And I said to the mom, how did you hear about Tesla? My mom. You know, and it's pretty cool, you know. It makes you really appreciate what we've been blessed with over the years. But again, it's been a lot of hard work. There's a little bit of luck and everything, but we worked very hard, and we still work very, very hard to keep doing what we do. We never let off the gas. I mean, listen, we broke up for 5 years. It's pretty well documented. We had our share of alcohol and drug problems, whatever, but we were lucky enough to figure it out and get it back together in 2000. We've been back together for 25 years. Amazing. You know? Yeah. And the thing of it is we respect what we've built, and sometimes you got to tweak it. You got to go, hey, this isn't working anymore. We got to rethink this. Where in 95, we just said, fuck it, you know, because we were high and had money and didn't really realize what it was like. So that I tell a lot of people, one of the best things that ever happened to Tesla was when we broke up, because look where we're at. We're here 25 years later. It humbled us. Yeah. Right. And it taught us to respect what we had. It's not easy to be young guys like we were, to come from the Oasis and then have 5 straight platinum records. Yeah. And be all over MTV and have everyone tell you you're great, you know, women, whatever the fuck it was. Right. And not have it affect you. So he went through that. You know, there was a time maybe where someone said, well, I met Brian. He was an asshole. He was arrogant. And I probably was at that time. I think it happens to everyone. But then you realize what reality is, and you either get grounded or you die or you're out. It's there's got to be a lot of pressure on young. I mean, all of us back in the day, that, you know, we all fantasized about, you know, what would it be like? You know, here's, you know, you did. What was the difference between the reality and the fantasy, Brian? Well, it's not the same. When you don't have fame and you get fame, you don't know how to handle it. If you come from no money and you get money, you don't know how to handle it. Right. If you come from not, you know, I was a little fat kid, right? I didn't get a lot of girls, to getting all the girls you ever wanted because you were on MTV. It didn't matter what the fuck you look like. You don't know how to handle it. No. So you start to believe the hype. Okay. Yeah. And then the thing of it is when we broke up, the hype was over. And then reality set in. And I tell people today, we're a much better band today than we were back then. Even though back then we sold all in millions of records. And the songs were, listen, the songs speak for themselves. Oh, absolutely. The ones that rose above the top, the cream of the crop. You know, we worked very hard. We always worked hard. But when we worked hard and then we partied hard, that's when it kind of splintered. Thank God to Pat Martin from 98 Rock, because he was very instrumental in getting the band back together. Okay. Because I had a band called Soul Motor that was on the radio. Frank had a band called Boondog Maine that was on the radio. Tommy and Jeff had a band called Bar 7 that was. So we all had separate things, but it was never the same as Tesla. Right. Right. I mean, we all got record deals. Right. We all went on tours, but we weren't headline. We were opening. It wasn't the same. And as it all kind of started to fizzle out, one night, me and Pat were at dinner at my house, at that house on J Street. J Street, okay. Yeah. Right. And he said, what do you think about, you know, getting back together for one show? And by that time, it had been 4 years. And I said, yeah, if you talk to everyone else and you get Tommy Skio, because he had been out the last 2 years we were together.
Okay.
Right. If it's all five of us, the original five, I'll do it. So I had already been talking with Frank all the time and Jeff. I didn't talk to Troy much. Everyone said, yeah. And, we got in a room after not being together for 6 years or 5 years. And the first song we played was Easy Come, Easy Go. And we stopped. We all started hugging and high-fiving. And
it just gelled again, right?
It was like we never were apart. And we kept it together with the original lineup until 2005. And then Tommy, had some problems again. So then, Dave Root joined after that, and he's been there since. And me and Tommy are closer than ever now, and he's alive and he's doing well. And that's all I care about.
Right.
You know what I mean? And Troy retired from Tesla a couple years ago, to just take an easier life. So we have Steve Brown, another Sacramento guy.
Yeah. Good guy.
Yeah. So we could have went out and got all kinds of different drummers, right? But we wanted someone that was like us.
Right.
And
from Sacramento.
From Sacramento. So we found Steve Brown, and we'd known Steve since he was a little kid because we knew his brother who was in Dawkins, Mick.
Yeah, right.
And we had the same management because, like I said, you can't believe the hype and the bullshit. We're all humans. We all do the same thing. We're just fortunate that we had success doing what we do, but there's no difference in me and you. You're a musician. I'm a musician, right?
Yep.
Right. And you can't look down upon people or think you're better than anyone. And that's the thing. Like I said, there were times early on that probably we were like that. It's hard not to be like that. It's encouraged. Our record company used to encourage us. You need to act more like rock stars. Because, that's why we weren't on those magazines like all those other bands, right? We had all these records we sold. We were all over the radio, but we weren't on magazines because we didn't look and act like rock stars.
You didn't have a gimmick.
No, our image was our songs.
Right.
We used to headline, when we headlined the biggest point in our career when we were headlining arenas, 1991, 92, 93. I used to walk around the arenas while the opening band were playing. No one knew it was me because there was no face to that band.
Right.
So you can look at it as, was the glass half empty or was it half full? So if you ask me today, Tesla never had a record that sold 10 million. We had one that sold 3.5, 5-man acoustic, but never 10 million, never an Appetite for Destruction or a Hysteria or a Slippery When Wet or a Blackout.
Right.
Because we didn't have that identifiable image. If you ask me today, would you rather had that or still be doing what you're doing 40 years later? I'll take the 40 years.
Amen, brother. That's awesome. Yeah. So, when you first started, obviously, you had Geffen Records, you had Q Prime, you had Peter Mensch, you had a dream team of people behind you, and then you break up. You come back in 2000. Now you're managing the band. What was the difference? How did that all come about?
Well, that's kind of a long story, but I'll give you the shorter version.
Okay.
So I was always the point guy. It came easily to me for a couple reasons, because before we got Q Prime, I was that guy that dealt with Dave and whatever, right? And, when we got rid of Steve Klausman, I just kind of took over with the record company and the lawyers and all that. And then Tom Zutat, the guy that signed us, he got us Cliff Bernstein and Peter Mensch, Q Prime. And then at that point, I was the guy in the band that was the go-to guy for them. They'd say, you need to do this. And then I would tell the guys, we need to do this. And some of the guys would call me the manager's boy, But I learned all that from Peter and Cliff. And Peter and Cliff are the best. There's no better on the planet. Still to this day, they're the best. And I tried to get them to take us back on in 2000. They said, no, you were pains in the ass. Good luck. And they're very proud of us, but we gave them guys nightmares. So what happened was when we got back together in 2000, a couple guys tried to come in and manage us. They weren't bringing anything new that we hadn't already been established, right?
Right.
And so, you know, the band, after a couple guys, said, Brian, why don't you do it? Because you've been doing it anyways. Because when we had these guys, I was telling them what to do.
Yeah.
Like, you should be doing this. So
you learn from the best.
I learned from Peter and Cliff. And who's going to look after your band better than you? And we plot and route what we're going to do. And then we have our own record label. So, you know, me and Frank sit there and discuss, you know, well, what do we want to do? Let's do a record. Let's write, you know, a couple singles. So we do everything on our own. And we found that it's just easier. Things get done more efficiently and right. And the best thing about it all is we get to keep more of the money that we make.
Right.
I mean, when we were selling millions of records and we had all these people getting paid, we were getting that much of the pot.
Right.
Now we're getting that much of the pot.
Right.
We're getting half of it.
You're not having to do one of those 360 deals where they got their clause and everything.
No. So me managing the band kind of came out of necessity. But when I look back on it, I was managing the band when we were doing the Oasis.
Yeah.
When me and Dave were getting settling, and I was calling Dave and saying, okay, look, let's do this weekend. So I was doing all the things that the managers were doing. I just didn't have the knowledge and the experience. And now, you know, I do, and I've been doing it for decades. But everyone's strength.
Yes. Yes.
Jeff's strength is that voice, right?
Yeah. Right.
Frank's strength is Frank taught me how to play. Frank is the musical genius of the band. My strength is in the business, and that triangle works, and it's worked for a very long time.
That's awesome. I had a couple other questions I wanted to ask you, Brian. Some of them are from other people. Most specifically, one from Michael Byer.
Mike Byer, yeah. Mike Byer was our first sound man. I love Mike Byer.
Well, he wanted me to ask. He said, "Hey, ask Brian about the first time that you met Paul McCartney."
Oh, okay. So the first time I met Paul McCartney, who on the 8th day God created, right? On the 9th day he created Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
On the 10th day he created Freddie Mercury. And on the 11th day he had to rest again.
Yeah.
Okay. He was worn out. It was 1987. Our first record had just came out. And we were in England doing a promotional tour, playing a few little clubs. Modern Day Cowboy just came out. And me and Frank went to Geffen Records to do some press. Well, Geffen Records is in this place called Soho Square.
Okay.
Well, in Soho Square, so is MPL, which is Paul McCartney's building. And I'd always seen MPL on the back of Paul's record. And I'm walking in this park with Frank. We're going back to the hotel. Frank actually wanted to go buy some guitars somewhere, look at guitars. And I saw this building. It said MPL. I said, Frank, that's Paul McCartney's building. And we look up on the 3rd floor window, there's Paul McCartney looking out over the park.
It's like,
Frank, there he is. And he goes, fuck, dude. I said, I'm staying here. He's going to come down. I'm going to meet him. He goes, oh, okay, whatever, dude. I'm going to go
have fun with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Good for you, man. So, and I had asked Peter Minch, right, who was our manager, Def Leppard's manager, and he knew Paul's manager. I said, hey, Peter, you think when I'm in London, you could call Paul McCartney and get it to where you meet him? He goes, why in the fuck would he want to meet you? You know, he's like, we weren't nobody, right? And I said, okay, well, thanks, Peter. And Peter was in Holland with Def Leppard making Hysteria, and we were in London.
Right.
So I stay there, and I had a camera with me just because it's the first time I was ever out of the country. I'm taking pictures, right? And he came down, and I went up to him, and I started talking to him. I'll send you the picture for this, by the way. You can put
Please,
it,
please. Yeah.
Hear me and Paul. And, you know, he was great. I said, hey, man, you know, thank you for all the songs and the music. And I'm playing in a band. And he said, yeah. And I told him what it was called. I said, we're playing at the Marquee. And he said, well, a lot of people get their start there. Good luck. And I said, well, thank you. and I walked away, and I had these pictures, right? And I ran into Jeff. And I was so, like, just dumbfounded.
Right.
I walked in front of a car, and Jeff had to pull me on the street because they drive the wrong way.
Right.
Because I was just like, oh, I met Paul McCartney in my life. I'm complete, right? And Jeff yanked me on. He's like, hey. So the next 3 days later, we go to Amsterdam to play, and we're playing this place called the Paradiso. And Peter's going to come with a couple of guys in Def Leppard. So I took the film of all these pictures of me and Paul McCartney, had it developed. So when Peter walked into the sound check, I said, hey, Peter, come here. He goes, what's up? He called me Shredded. Shredded. And I handed him pictures, and he looks at me and goes, kid, you got balls the size of Texas. And that was my first meeting with him.
That's awesome.
I've met him 4 or 5 times. But he does not know who I am. I mean, you know, he's so cool and such a gentleman.
Like he would be, just be, you know, very down to earth and, you know.
Fucking great. I wanted to meet my heroes when I was a kid was Paul McCartney, Jimmy Page, and Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
And I've met Paul McCartney. I'm very good friends with Jimmy. He's a dear friend of mine.
Wow. Awesome.
And I never got to meet Freddie, but I know Brian pretty good.
Wow.
So, you know, those were my heroes when I was a kid, those 3.
What is it like to go from, okay, these are your heroes to now they're your friends? I mean, is there the divide, or is it just sort of like, no, they're just like us. They're just like people.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. So me and Jimmy are good friends. And I think we're good friends because I don't bug him with 100 Led Zeppelin questions.
Right.
We met through
on that.
Right. We met through a mutual friend who's a very good friend to both Jimmy and myself, named Ross Halpin, photographer. And I met Jimmy in 1995. And, you know, we're just friendly. And we you know, so when I would go to London, I would go out to dinner with Ross and Jimmy, or we'd go, you know, record shopping or coffee, whatever. But it was just like, you know, he obviously knew I was in Tesla. I obviously knew he was Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
But it was never, to me, he was just Jimmy, my friend. Right? So about 5-7 years ago, they do this thing in Seattle for him. Paul, was it Wells, the guy that invented Microsoft or whatever? Yeah. Does this thing where all these people honor Jimmy Page, all these musicians. And I get invited to be part of this.
Wow.
And I play with Paul Rogers from Bad Company. And we do the Firm song. And okay. Jimmy don't know I'm there. He don't know I'm coming or nothing. So the last thing to play is Paul Rogers, Brian Wheat, and Rich Robinson from Black Rose. Okay. And he looks at me like, oh, fuck, you're here, because he's in the front row. Well, he decides he's going to get up and play.
Oh.
and he wasn't supposed to. So he gets up on the stage and he comes over, stands next to me, and I'm helping him. He's like, what do we do? So let's do rock and roll, man. It's easy, right? He's like, okay. So at that point, he turns Jimmy's here. I'm next to Jimmy, and the drummer's back here. He turns his back to the crowd for the drummer to count in. Yeah. And I looked at it. I went, holy fuck. It's Jimmy Page.
And you had never played with him before, right?
The one time it was the difference between my friend and my idol, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was floating, dude.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I could only imagine.
Floating on the stage. And
because you'd never played with him before, right?
I'd never played with him.
Friends.
We had been to art exhibits. We'd been to dinner. I'd been to his house.
Yeah.
He's never saw Tesla play.
Right. But
You know what I mean?
that you get on stage with the guy, now all of a sudden he goes from Jimmy, your friend, to Jimmy freaking Page, and I'm playing with him. That's awesome.
Right. Yeah. And it was like, it was one of those moments, one of the gift from God. I got to,
Yep.
for trying to be a good guy, God said, I'm going to let you play with one of your heroes. But he is the utmost gentleman.
That's awesome.
Don't believe a lot of the bullshit or whatever you may have heard all. He is a fucking true gentleman and one of the kindest people I've ever met in my life.
I believe that. I really do. I've seen him in interviews and he just comes off that way. So.
And he wrote the Rain song.
Yeah, right. So
yeah,
here's a question for you. How did you guys ever come up with doing Little Suzi by PhD?
Ronnie Montrose brought that song to us when we did the first demos with him.
Great song. You guys do it more than justice. I mean, I like your version even better than PhD's, but
so do I.
Right on, yeah.
That song went through a few incarnations. There was, and the version that Ronnie produced, one day I'll put it out in a box set. Sounds nothing like the version as the Tesla version.
Okay.
That version that from Mechanical Resonance,
right,
was produced by a guy named Max Norman who did Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh, wow.
Because in the beginning, we went through about 4 or 5 producers, and none of them wanted to produce us. So we tried out a bunch of different guys. But the one thing that came out of the Max Norman sessions was that version of Little Suzi, the version we did.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the version that's recorded on Mechanical Resonance was produced by Michael and Barbiero and Steve Thompson. But that arrangement, that style, that Led Zeppelin-ish kind of thing, that all came from Max Norman.
That's beautiful. That's a great song. You going to be doing anything here in Sacramento or close to?
Yeah. I think we're playing Thunder Valley in November.
Oh.
Yeah, it's on sale.
This year?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to go. I'll be there.
Yeah, November. Yeah, it'll be, we always do that about every 18 months.
Tickets are on sale now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's about 3/4 sold right now. I mean, it's 8 months that way or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But don't wait too long because
I won't.
It always sells out but I'll hook you up, man. Sacramento's a hard one for me though.
Is it?
Well, no, I mean like when I play Sacramento because everyone wants tickets because I grew up. You know what I mean? I tell people, it's like, hey, I want to come and see you. Can you hook me up? I'm like, yeah, come and see me in Des Moines.
I don't mind paying for tickets.
Yeah, Sacramento. Because dudes that gave you a ride from the Oasis to the fucking AM/PM to get a 12-pack of beer in 1984.
They want tickets.
Hey, yeah, and you go, hey, buddy, and you love to help everyone out, but there's only so many tickets you can give.
So, Brian, thank you so much.
Okay.
And peace.
The Sacramento music scene in the 80s, I was there. Where were you?